YouTube, how the hell are ya? This is Around the Sticks with your host, IconicBelow, and today we are talking the COD League. League leaders, breaking down the fall of Prof, some cool things that we saw in the 5Ks, and what we all cannot wait for, COD Champs. First, as always, it is time for the COD League. We have seen some shakeups in the standings, but first, we have no surprise in Optic Gaming going 4-0 this week to bring up their overall standing up to an amazing 7-1. The next are the two surprises of Rise, who went 2-0 this week, and Justice, who went 1-1. They're also tied with Denial, who didn't play this week at all, and they're all tied at 4-2 for the second through fourth place. 5th through 8th is also tied as well at 500. All of these teams went even this week as well. These teams are FaZe Red, TK, Elevate, and Optic Nation. In 9th is the cooling down team of Automatic Reload, who finished this week at 3-5 after going 0-2 this week. That was really something they did not need. They needed to go at least 1-1 just because of them starting off so hot with their players, Burnt and Anticity really leading their way, and they kind of just fell on their face. The last three are the huge disappointments many people felt were going to come out in the league and lead the league and everything else, and one of them obviously is the imports of TCM, who went 2-4. Obviously, this being their first week, their record is 2-4, so they wanted to catch up on as many games as they possibly could. So with them going 2-4, it's definitely better than what I expected them to do, especially with them just moving here. So 2-4 is definitely better than what most people expected. First week, Envy disappointed everyone who went 2-2. Making their overall record 3-7. Now that isn't a step in the right direction, but the biggest step for them was they've won 2 search and destroy maps. They didn't win at all the first week and a half, I believe, on search, which is by far insane to me. Last is Prophecy, who didn't improve at all with their 2-6 record, with going 0-2 last week. That team is depressing to me. Next, let's go over the league leaders for kill-death ratio and their map count. First is the same as last week, Mr. Octane at a 1.38 in 23 maps. Next is Mr. Formal, who has jumped from probably about 10th all the way up to number 2 at a 1.26 on 29 maps. Number 3 is a person who probably shouldn't even be considered as qualified anymore, which is Sender at a 1.21 on 7 maps. Number 4 is Clayster at a 1.18 and 25 maps. Scump, who's at a 1.16 and 29 maps played. Anticity, who is blowing everybody out of the water in maps played right now, at a 1.14 with 35 maps played. Sharp, who is by far surprising for the Slayer for TK, at a 1.13 on 23 maps played. Burns, who by far has been the breakout player of this entire league so far, at a 1.11 and 35 maps played. Saints, who has been the godsend for Envy, at a 1.1 and 41 maps played. Crim6 at a 1.09 and 29 maps played. Chino, who's leading Rise, at a 1.09 and 25 maps played. Huddle, who is playing for Elevate, at a 1.08 and 30 maps played. Zuma, who I guess has been subbed out quite a few times, is at a 1.08 and 30 maps played. And Mr. TP, who is leading Optic Nation, at a 1.08 and 27 maps played. And Huddle's duo Slacked at a 1.08 and 27 maps played. And last but not least, who is either 16th or 15th, depending on if you count Sender or not, is Enable from FaZe at a 1.06 and 37 maps played. After looking at the league leaders, there are 2 teams missing, which are TCM and Prophecy. They obviously make up 2 of the bottom 3, but I would like to mention one thing that really kind of surprises me on this list is there's players like Karma who aren't on this list. And there's only one player from FaZe Red. And players like Looney aren't on this list. Those 3 things really, really kind of surprised me, and I didn't really expect those things to happen. I expected Looney to be in the top 10 at least, especially after watching him play in the LANs that have recently happened. Obviously, he may not be playing at the TK house, and that could be what's going on, but TK seems to be struggling quite a little bit here, especially in KD. Now, I feel like it's important to break down Prophecy by the numbers using the most confusing stats I possibly could find. But first, let's break down their weak points. Prof's weak points are by far CTF and uplink. Although many people consider Ricky and Bose some of the best players for CTF, their entire team has a negative KD, with their highest player being Ricky at a .97 with just over a cap a game. This may be just because having 2 different teams, one for champs and one for the league, could be dividing their time and not being able to help them out at all. Obviously, they most likely will end up picking up Mochila and trying to pick up Classic, or even keeping Apathy. That would be a pretty nice team, but seeing these guys struggle is really, really sad, and truthfully, I would expect more out of them. Everybody says Apathy has been on fire, but thinking that he's around a .89 KD in the league is nuts. Apathy is normally that player around a 1 KD, maybe to a 1.05. It's just sad that he's this low. Now, to me, after diving in depth on Prophecy, the only chance that they have is if it goes to Game 5. If they can take a respawn off people in the league, then they can win the entire series. With a 7-5 record in S&D, it seems to be their best game type. What they lack is a main slayer. They have to put too much pressure on players who aren't playing their normal roles. If you look at Apathy, if you look at Study, if you even look at Bose, who's probably trying to do at least a little bit of slaying with this pickup squad, they're not all main slayers. They're not all objective players. So they're really kind of playing out of their role. If you look at Bose, he should be running the objective. If you look at Ricky, he should be in that post-up AR. He should not have to run flags. He should not have to run an SMG, especially with this team. Apathy is not doing what he should be doing. And if they want him to be that slayer, he should be running an SMG, not necessarily a BAL. Look during Roster Mania for them to pick up a huge splash with getting a slayer such as possibly Parasite, Huke. It depends on who's going to end up staying on this team and who's going to leave. It also depends on what FaZe Red's going to do with having their 2 teams, one being in the league, one being out of the league, and really seeing who's going to split up on that team. Next is the Insanely.
Now it's time for the ugly. It's the fucking ugly, bitch. Let's go.
Stats. To me, these stats are holding their teams back, and truthfully, they've been the Achilles heel for most of these teams. First is the hardpoint stat of Aches, with a downright pitiful .79 KD on 6 maps, makes me think that he should be playing the objective. Next is the depressing search stat of the player Merc. With a .51 KD in over 100 rounds, that means he's probably only gotten 1 kill in quite a few of these rounds. That's sad. The surprising player Theory, who has been playing out of his mind, but in the league, his Achilles heel has been 5 maps and KD on uplink of a .62. The next is one of the superstars from the EU, King Jerd, has a depressive .89 KD with 1 cap per map. Now, that doesn't sound utterly horrible, but if you think about it, King Jerd, for all of Black Ops 2 and all of Ghost, was compared to Scumpy, and many people compared them because they both had the nickname the King They wanted to go at each other. Now all of a sudden it looks like Jared's slacking off a little bit. Maybe he's not up to that standard yet because he doesn't have the team that he needs. I don't know. Maybe we'll see something crazy happen during Roster Mania. Now, last is the Call of Duty ambassador, Mr. Optic Nadeshot himself. He has a dramatic .65 KD and 95 rounds of S&D. Now, I understand that his team is going to slay out. They are very, very, very slay heavy, and they are a very, very good S&D team. But with Optic Nadeshot being the S&D essential star that he used to be, you would expect him to have at least a 1 KD. And it's really, really depressive to me and probably quite a few of his fans that he's down that far on the list. Now, it is time to look for the underrated players who are bound for success at Champs. The first one seems to be the breakout player for Automatic Reload, Anticity. This could be his shining moment as a Slayer. I expect him to be the next player. Expect him and the next player, Burns, to have over a 1 KD and get the recognition they deserve from the higher named teams like Optic, Envy, and probably Denial. Now, Burns and a few other players have come out saying they are being overlooked, such as Apathy and Burns, and I feel like Replays was another one of them, that have come out and said, why aren't we being looked at? We're just as good as these other players. We just haven't been given the chance. Now, this could be their breakout moment, and we're going to have to see where they could end up. Next up is TP. He has been one of the underrated players in his new role as a support Slayer, with him being 13th in KD in the league, and it is probably the key to Optic Nation's success. As long as they have Killa playing the objective, Miracles being a support Slayer, and TP being the SMG Slayer, along with Karma being the AR Slayer, there's not much that can go wrong with this team. But Killa slacks off. He starts dying on the hill. He's going to want to start playing slower, and that's not his role anymore. That is where they're going to go wrong, and that is why TP is the key to Optic Nation's success. Last is the Magunda himself, Sharp. He has been playing out of his mind in S&D with a 1.44 KD and 65 rounds. These players may not lead in every category, but I feel like they will be the ones who step up to the plate in the biggest tournament of the year. Now, after watching the 2Ks and 5Ks, we saw some gun diversity actually, which to me was quite surprising. And I'm sure all of you guys sitting at home watching with me were just as surprised as we saw as Benson and Mr. X were screaming at the top of their lungs for players like Aqua and Nadeshot, bringing out these randomly cool guns and actually destroying some people with them. Now, I would like to break down the new guns that we saw, like the EPM3, the XMGs, and the HBR-A3. The two guns that I feel stick out as a possible place in competitive are obviously the EPM3 and the HBAR. First, let's break down the gun dubbed the worst gun in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare by Drifter, by many players all around the world, the EPM3. And let's see why I feel it could be becoming competitive. The EPM3 was brought out by Team Revenge's Aqua on Retreat Hardpoint. Benson and Mr. X were amazed by how similar it is to the FAL. The EPM3 can 3-hit kill at any range with insane accuracy. Its recoil is literally just as low as the FAL was in Black Ops 2, and its damage is that much higher. It's ridiculous. The two main drawbacks are the EPM3's horrible iron sights, which lock up a sight in your attachment slot, along with the heatsink in another attachment slot. That means you only got one attachment left, and possibly that's locked up with stock or quick draw. So all of your attachments are completely locked up with this gun, and that is the major drawback. The other drawback is the movement speed. You only have the heavy weapon movement speed, which is about 5% slower than ARs and 10% slower than SMGs. The BAL may have met its maker with the HBR. This high damage assault rifle is similar to a Scar H from Black Ops 2 or the Big Daddy himself from Modern Warfare 2. Probably my favorite gun from Modern Warfare 2 other than the ACR. Nadeshot has been using the HBR on S&D mostly, but we definitely could see it in some objective game modes, which I would love to see, especially on BioLab. That is the only games that I've seen him use HBR on, but you guys let me know down in the comments where you think this gun will fit. This gun fits a similar role to the MTAR from Ghost, where it's a higher damage than what is being used already, and it fits that little bit of a faster playstyle just because it does hit that much harder. The possible gun, I feel, could be used as a suppressed gun for S&D and could be used on longer range maps on hardpoint. I don't feel like it could be used on like uplink and stuff like that. It does hit hard, but I feel like the faster fire rate of the bow will definitely overshadow that. This gun has a huge 3-hit kill range and extends all the way out into medium range. That will definitely help with running the suppressor, with running a grip, and if you like the iron sight to run a stock with it, you'll feel more comfortable with it, especially on S&D and stuff like that. If you decide to use a suppressor, most people don't use the parabolic microphone, especially in competitive, so it can definitely dominate, especially in the short to close range encounters. Next up is to predict the pools and see what some of these people will be going at in the tournament. Now, if they do seeding after pool play the same way that they did last year, they'll be randomized. So be warned, I'm going to be doing the same, and truthfully, I just took the 1 seeds from each pool and put it up against the number 2 seeds from each pool and then flipped the teams and then kind of went through it. For the bracket down in the description, so make sure you guys look at that so that way you guys know exactly what I'll be talking about. And let's start breaking down pool play. Now, I feel like Optic Gaming in Pool A will be the 1 seed going 3-0. Orbit will go 2-1. And the only other team that picks up a win, I feel, will definitely be Vitality. The reason I feel Vitality wins is I haven't heard of anything of NXG Rapid, and Vitality by far could have been the number 2 team coming out of this pool if Gotaga decided to play. Sorry, I can't pronounce that name to save my life. Next up is Denial bracket. I feel like they will end up going 2-1 and being the number 2 seed out of this pool, and Prophecy will go 3-0 in the pool and be the number 1 seed. Clarity goes 0-3, and Hyper Games goes 1-2. The next one is a little bit confusing one. I feel like FaZe Red's Pool C will go, FaZe Red will go 2-1, and AR will go 2-1. But FaZe Red will end up beating AR as one of their wins, and that will give them the higher seed. And Fabe Germany will go 1-2, and All Stars will go 1-2. Now, Pool D, Optic Nation's pool will go. Optic Nation will go 2-1. Gamers 2 will go 1-2. SSOF will go 0-3. And the T1 Daughters from last year will go 3-0 to lead the pool, with Optic Nation being their number 2. Now, Pool Think E, which is Envy, Menace, UX, and Mindfreak. I feel Mindfreak will go 3-0 and lead the pool. Envy will go 1-2. Menace will go 2-1. And UX will go 0-3. The reason I feel Envy will get knocked out of this pool is because of how bad they are doing on search. They are doing utterly horrible, and with them not playing the same exact way that they need to be, I don't feel like they have the momentum behind them in order to win. I do feel like they could take the game off Menace, and all of a sudden, hey look, they are in the 2nd seed. But I feel like those two are a toss-up. Everybody else is pretty much a lock. Next up is Revenge's pool. Revenge goes 3-0. Aware goes 2-1 to be the 2nd seed. And Fuse goes 1-2. And Threes Up goes 0-3. I feel really bad for saying Threes Up goes 0-3. but I feel Infused will at least pick up one win, and Aware, after seeing how good Watson is, could definitely go 2-1, or possibly even flip that to a 3-0 and beat Revenge. But I see Revenge playing really, really good and definitely are going to be a team to reckon with this weekend. Next up is FaZe Black's pool, with FaZe Black going 3-0, TCM going 2-1, Essentia going 0-3, and Below Zero going 1-2. Goddamn, I would love to be able to root for that damn team, but I absolutely can't. I hope they get some better players on that team, because I would love to see Below Zero win a LAN. Obviously, if you guys know my name, that'd be great for me, but not my team. And next and last is the death pool, which is TK, Epsilon, Integral, and SB. I feel like Integral goes 0-3, and the last three, TK, Epsilon, and SB, go 2-1 each. But I feel like SB will make it out as the 1 seed, and Epsilon will make it out as the 2 seed. I didn't really know how to put these guys, so I ended up matching up player to player and looking at stats and trying to figure out exactly who is the best teams out of those three. And I feel like SB has a better AR player than Gunjar and Dito. Fizzerp is by far a better player than Theory. John is a better player. Well, I feel like Sharp's a better player than John. And then I feel like Neslo is the better. I can't even say Neslo is a better player than Looney, but I feel like he's a little bit more consistent. Epsilon by far is better than TK, with Swanee being about 2 miles ahead of Gunjar. The only player I feel like is better than Epsilon on TK is probably Sharp. So that means my 1 seeds are Optic, Prof, FaZe, T1, Mind Freak, Revenge, FaZe Black, and SB. My number 2 seeds are Orbit, Denial, AR, Optic Nation, Menace, Aware, and Epsilon. Now, if you guys open the link down in the description to challenge.com/champscompetitive, you will see my bracket for Call of Duty Champs, and I randomized them obviously, so the matchups are quite ridiculous if you really look at it. But I will completely go over the bracket right now, so that way you guys who are listening to it don't have to really look at it. So first off, we have Optic Gaming as the 1 seed, going up against 16 Epsilon. I feel like Optic Gaming 3-1s them. I feel like Epsilon will most likely end up taking the search, but other than that, they're not going to hold up to the Slayers of Optic Gaming. Next up comes SB and Orbit, who are the 8 and 9 seed. I feel like SP comes out and 3-2s them. I feel like they win both the searches and probably the uplink. I feel like Orbit will probably end up taking the hard point and the CTF. Next is T1 versus Menace. I feel like T1 3-1's Menace. I haven't really heard very good things about Menace, but I feel like they'll step up and at least make it into bracket play. But T1 by far, after coming out and showing what they had last year, we'll definitely see how good they are this year with the pickup of Fate. Next up is the 5 seed Mind Freak going up against the 12 seed Optic Nation. I feel like Mind Freak 3-1's Optic Nation, with Optic Nation taking the S&D. Next one, Prof versus TCM. Prof is the number 2 seed. TCM is the 15th seed. I feel like TCM knocks out Prof, going 3-1. Prof will end up probably taking the S&D. Number 7 seed FaZe Black goes up against Denial. I feel like FaZe Black ends up winning 3-2 against Denial, and they end up picking up probably the hard point and the uplink, with Denial picking up the CTF and the S&D. FaZe and Aware EU is next, where FaZe 3-1's Aware, where Aware picks up the S&D obviously. Revenge 3-1's AR. I feel like AR ends up picking up whatever the game 3 is, which is either uplink or CTF. Optic Gaming 3-0's SB. T1 and Mind Freak have an amazing 5-game round 11, with T1 winning. TCM versus FaZe Black. FaZe Black 3-2 TCM. TCM ends up winning the uplink, not the uplink, the CTF and the hardpoint. FaZe versus Revenge. Revenge wins 3-1. FaZe wins the hardpoint. Optic Gaming versus T1. Optic Gaming wins 3-1. FaZe Black versus Revenge. Revenge wins 3-1. FaZe Black ends up winning whatever game 3 is. And then that leaves Optic Gaming versus Revenge in the winners bracket finals. Then in losers, Orbit loses to Epsilon. Menace loses to Optic Nation. Prof beats Denial. And I can't see the last one. And then it goes FaZe versus Epsilon, TCM versus Optic Nation, and Mind Freak versus Prof. Epsilon wins, Optic Nation wins, and Mind Freak wins. And then it goes Epsilon and Optic Nation. Epsilon wins 3-2. Mind Freak versus SB. SB wins 3-2. Then it's T1 versus Epsilon. Epsilon wins 3-2. And then FaZe Black versus SB, and SB wins 3-1. SB versus Epsilon. SB wins 3-2, obviously, because they're going to dominate in Search and Destroy, and I feel like they could pick up one of the objective types of Epsilon. And then it goes Revenge, SB, and Revenge by far has the better Slayers, and they pick up 3-1, obviously, with SB winning the Search and Destroy. Now, as always, guys, I would like to say a few things about the sponsors that make this show possible. First, use code ICONIC for Cinch controllers. And if you would like to donate, there is a link down in the description. If you're new here and enjoy the content, click subscribe and make sure you leave your opinion in the comments. See you all fucking later. Peace out.